Hi, hello. Welcome to everybody to the Pragna channel for another reading of the book Sophie's World by Jostein Gaarder. We are joined in the panel today by S.K. Garu as well as Black Tiger Garu. S.K. Garu, welcome to the panel. Black Tiger Garu, welcome to the panel.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Today we are going to pick up. Hello, sir. So today we are going to pick up where we left off from the last stream. So I think we are now up to 15 sessions have been completed and we are now into the 16th session. Last time let me actually give the link before I start so that if anybody wants to come and join the panel, read, discuss, you are more than welcome to come. The only requirement is no abuse, no judgment. We are all trying to learn. And the topic is also a bit of a interesting topic. It is about Western philosophy 101. And in the last stream, we got into the details of this particular period in the European philosophical journey called the Baroque period. Baroque being not fitting to standard, something different, something not conforming to the continuous and very convenient uniformity of the Renaissance period. So, with that said, now the book is taking another turn, so to speak. Now we are getting to the philosophies of who a lot of people in the West consider to be the founding fathers or the neo-philosophical founding fathers, Descartes being one of them. The name is written Descartes because he is French. It is pronounced Descartes. So with that, Eskayaru, if you want to get going, we'll kick off the session.
So I'll take Sophie's part and you are Alberto. Right, Vishwagaru?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Descartes. He wanted to clear all the rubble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lag lo unnara? Okay.
I think he's a little bit behind.
Vishwagaru, mic check. 1.
Yeah, can you hear me, Eskayaru? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you need
cutting
to
in
check the
and out.
mic, sir. You're behind each and every dialogue.
Yeah.
My mic?
Lag. Okay, 1.
Okay. Shall I leave and come back?
Maybe it could be, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that is better. Okay, so Vishwagaru. Okay.
I think it's better to check the mic again by just,
No, I think Vishwagaru dropped from the other device. Okay, the join and the remove. Okay.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Okay, 1.
Okay. 1.
No, you should say 2.
Okay. Okay.
1,
2,
3,
4,
5,
6,
Okay.
7,
Good.
8,
9.
2.
Okay, okay.
Good enough.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let me start. Descartes. He wanted to clear all the rubble off the site. Albertus stood up, took off the red cloak, and laid it over a chair. Then he settled himself once again in the corner of the sofa.
René Descartes was born in 1596 and lived in a number of different European countries at various periods of his life. Even as a young man, he had a strong desire to achieve insight into the nature of man and the universe. And by man, they mean woman also. Okay, just no loss of generality there. But after studying philosophy, he became increasingly convinced of his own ignorance.
Like Socrates?
More or less like him, yes, like Socrates. He was convinced that certain knowledge is only attainable through reason. We can never trust what the old books tell us. We cannot even trust what our senses tell us.
Plato thought that too. He believed that
Plato
only
thought that too. Please go ahead.
yeah, Plato thought that too. He believed that only reason can give us certain knowledge.
Exactly. There is a direct line of descent from Socrates to Plato and Plato via St. Augustine to Descartes. They were all typical rationalists, okay, in quotes, remember this, convinced that reason was the only path to knowledge. After comprehensive studies, Descartes came to the conclusion that the body of knowledge handed down from the Middle Ages was not necessarily reliable. You can compare him to Socrates, who did not trust the general views he encountered in the central square of Athens. So, what does one do, Sophie? Can you tell me that?
You begin to work out your own philosophy.
Right? Descartes decided to travel around Europe the way Socrates spent his life talking to people in Athens. He relates that from then on, he meant to confine himself to seeking the wisdom that was to be found either within himself or in the great book of the world. So he joined the army and went to war, which enabled him to spend periods of time in different parts of Central Europe. Later, he lived for many years, for some years, in Paris. But in 1629, right, 1629 means he was probably in his mid 30s. He went to Holland, where he remained for nearly 20 years working on his mathematical and philosophic writings rather. In 1649, he was invited to Sweden by Queen Christina, but his sojourn in what he called the land of bears, ice, and rocks brought on an attack of pneumonia, and he died in the winter of 1650. So sad.
So he was only 54 when he died.
Yes, but he was to have enormous influence on philosophy. Even after his death, one can say without exaggeration that Descartes was the father of modern philosophy. Following the heady rediscovery of man and nature in the Renaissance, the need to assemble contemporary thought into one coherent philosophical system again presented itself. The first significant system builder was Descartes, and he was followed by Spinoza and Leibniz, Locke and Berkeley, Hume and Kant. Wow.
What do you mean by a philosophical system? Okay, Vishwagaru? Okay, let me continue. I mean, a philosophy that is constructed from the ground up and that is concerned with finding explanations for all the central questions of philosophy. Antiquity had its great system constructors in Plato and Aristotle. The Middle Ages had St. Thomas Aquinas, who tried to build a bridge between the Aristotle's philosophy and Christian theology. Then came the Renaissance, with a welter of old and new beliefs about nature and science, God and man. Not until the 17th century did philosophers make any attempt to assemble the new ideas into a clarified philosophical system, and the first to attempt it was Descartes. His work was the forerunner of what was to be philosophy's most important project in the coming generations. His main concern was with what we can know, or in other words, certain knowledge. The other great question that preoccupied him was the relationship between body and mind. Both these questions were the substance of philosophical argument for the next 150 years. Then Sophie says, he must have been ahead of his time. And now Alberto continues. But the
Ah,
question.
but the question belonged to the age. When it came to acquiring certain knowledge, many of his contemporaries voiced a total philosophic skepticism. They thought that man should accept that he knew nothing, but Descartes would not. Had he done so, he would not have been a real philosopher. We can again draw a parallel with Socrates, who did not accept the skepticism of the sophists. And it was in Descartes' lifetime that the new natural sciences were developing a method by which to provide certain and exact descriptions of natural processes.
Continue.
Descartes was obliged to ask himself if there was a similar, certain, and exact method of philosophic reflection.
That I can understand.
But that was only part of it. The new physics had also raised the question of the nature of matter and thus what determines the physical processes of nature. More and more people argued in favor of a mechanistic view of nature. But the more mechanistic the philosophical was seen to be, the more pressing became the question of the relationship between body and soul.
Physical world.
Physical world.
Yeah.
Yes, more, but the more mechanistic the physical world was seen to be, the more pressing became the question of the relationship between body and soul. Until the 17th century, the soul had commonly been considered as a sort of breath of life that pervaded all living creatures. The original meaning of the words soul and spirit is, in fact, breath and breathing. This is the case for almost all European languages. To Aristotle, the soul was something that was present everywhere in the organism as its life principle and therefore could not be conceived as separate from the body. So he was able to speak of a plant soul or an animal soul. Philosophers did not introduce any radical division of soul and body until the 17th century. The reason was that the motions of all material objects, including the body, animal, or human, were explained as involving mechanical processes. But man's soul could surely not be part of this body machinery, could it? What of the soul then? An explanation was required, not least of how something spiritual could start a mechanical process.
It's a strange thought, actually.
What is?
I decide to lift my arm, and then, well, the arm lifts itself. Or I decide to run for a bus, and the next second, my legs are moving. Or I am thinking about something sad, and suddenly I'm crying. So there must be some mysterious connection between body and consciousness.
That was exactly the problem that set Descartes' thoughts going. Like Plato, he was convinced that there was a sharp division between spirit and matter. But as to how the mind influences the body, or the soul, the body, Plato could not provide an answer.
Neither have I. So I'm looking forward to hearing what Descartes' theory was.
Let us follow this let us follow his own line of reasoning. Albert pointed to the book that lay on the table between them. In his discourse on method, Descartes raises the question of the method the philosopher must use to solve a philosophical problem. Science already had its new method.
So you said.
Descartes maintains that we cannot accept anything as being true unless we can clearly and distinctly perceive it. To achieve this, to achieve this, to achieve this can require the breaking down of a compound problem into as many single factors as possible. Then we can take our point of departure in the simplest idea of all. You could say that every single thought must be weighed and measured. Rather, rather in the way Galileo wanted everything to be measured and everything immeasurable to be made measurable. Descartes believed that philosophy should go from the simple to the complex. Only then would it be possible to construct a new insight. And finally, it would be necessary to ensure by constant enumeration and control that nothing was left out. Then a philosophical conclusion would be within reach.
It sounds almost like a math test.
Yes, Descartes was a mathematician. He is considered the father of analytical geometry, and he made important contributions to the science of algebra. Descartes wanted to use the mathematical method even for philosophizing. He set out to prove philosophical truths in the way one proves a mathematical theorem. In other words, he wanted to use exactly the same instrument that we can use when we work with figures, namely reason, since only reason can give us certainty. It is far from certain that we can rely on our senses. We have already noted Descartes' affinity with Plato, who also observed that mathematics and numerical ratio give us more certainty than the evidence of our senses.
But can one solve philosophical problems that way?
We had better go back to Descartes' own reasoning. His aim is to reach certainty about the nature of life, and he starts by maintaining that at first one should doubt everything. He didn't want to build on sand, you see.
No, because if the foundations give way, the whole house collapses.
As you so neatly put it, my child. Now Descartes did not think it reasonable to doubt everything, but he thought it was possible in principle to doubt everything. For one thing, it is by no means certain that we advance our philosophical quest by reading Plato or Aristotle. It may increase our knowledge of history, but not of the world. It was important for Descartes to rid himself of all handed down or received learning before beginning his own philosophical construction.
He wanted to clear all the rubble off the site before starting to build his new house.
Thank you. He wanted to use only fresh new materials in order to be sure that his new thought construction would hold. But Descartes' doubts went even deeper. We cannot even trust what our senses tell us, he said. Maybe they are deceiving us.
How come?
When we dream, we feel we are experiencing reality. What separates our waking feelings from our dream feelings?
Continue.
When I consider this carefully, I find not a single property which, with certainty, separates the waking state from the dream. writes Descartes. And he goes on, how can you be certain that your whole life is not a dream?
Zeb thought he had only been dreaming when he had slept in the Baron's bed. And
And when he was lying in the Baron's bed, he thought his life as a poor peasant was only a dream. So, in the same way, Descartes ends up doubting absolutely everything. Many philosophers before him had reached the end of the road at that very point.
so they didn't get very far.
But Descartes tried to work forward from this zero point. He doubted everything, and that was the only thing he was certain of. But now something struck him. One thing had to be true, and that was that he doubted. When he doubted, he had to be thinking, and because he was thinking, it had to be certain that he was a thinking being, or as he himself expressed it, cogito ergo sum.
Which means?
I think, therefore I am.
That's cogito, sir. Cogito.
Cogito.
Like cognition, cogito. Yeah.
Right, sir. Cogito ergo sum. I think this is Latin, sir.
Yeah. I cognize, therefore I am. I think, therefore I am. This is like the foundational statement of one of the foundational statements of the current day Western philosophy.
I'm not surprised he realized that.
Fair enough. But notice the intuitive certainty with which he suddenly perceives himself as a thinking being. Perhaps you now recall what Plato said, that what we grasp with our reason is more real than what we grasp with our senses. That's the way it was for Descartes. He perceived not only that he was a thinking / he realized at the same time that this thinking / was more real than the material world which we perceive with our senses. And he went on. He was by no means through with his philosophical quest.
What came next?
Descartes now asked himself if there was anything more he could perceive with the same intuitive certainty. He came to the conclusion that in his mind he had a clear and distinct idea of a perfect entity. This was an idea he had always had, and it was thus self-evident to Descartes that such an idea could not possibly have come from himself. The idea of a perfect entity cannot be originated from one who was himself imperfect, he claimed. Therefore, the idea of a perfect entity must have originated from that perfect entity itself, or, in other words, from God. That God exists was therefore just as self-evident for Descartes as that a thinking being must exist.
Now he was jumping to a conclusion. He was more cautious to begin with.
You're right. Many people have called that his weak spot. But you say conclusion. Actually, it was not a question of proof. Descartes only meant that we all possess the idea of a perfect entity, and that inherent in that idea is the fact that this perfect entity must exist, because a perfect entity wouldn't be perfect if it didn't exist. Neither would we possess the idea of a perfect entity if there were no perfect entity. For we are imperfect, so the idea of perfection cannot come from us. According to Descartes, the idea of God is innate. It is stamped on us from birth, like the artisan's mark stamped on his product.
Yes, but just because I possess the idea of a crocophant doesn't mean that
Crocophant.
crocophant doesn't mean that the crocophant exists.
Descartes would have said that it is not inherent in the concept of a crocophant that it exists. On the other hand, it is inherent in the concept of a perfect entity that such entity exists. According to Descartes, this is just as certain as it is inherent in the idea of a circle that all points of the circle are equidistant from the center. You cannot have a circle that does not conform to this law, nor can you have a perfect entity that lacks its most important property, namely existence.
That's an odd way of thinking.
Yes, excuse me, sir. Viswa sir, can you explain these 2-3 paragraphs?
Yeah, no problem. We also have Davuji that is cutting in and out a little bit, but he might also come. But
Yes.
essentially, what he thought was, look, existence is inherent in perfection is one of the postulates or assumptions, right? We are imperfect, but the idea of a perfect being is etched in our imperfection. Okay, so these are all like, at that point Descartes might have thought that these are all self-evident, but they can also be questioned, basically, right? So here is the deal: just as man exists, God should exist is his conclusion, or is his sort of base assumption. Why? Because the idea of perfection would not exist in your mind if it did not exist at all, basically, right? So this is in a
Right,
way
sir.
thinking about creation. There is a creation aspect to this. I'm trying to parallel this with the Indian philosophies, which is, see, if you think about, that's the only way to sort of play this off, because otherwise it's a conclusion, it's not a reasoning, right? So Descartes believed, like Socrates and Plato, there's a connection between reason and being. The more self-evident a thing is to one's reason, the more certain it is that it exists, right? So they assume that there is an intuitive way in which you can predict existence. Because the idea exists, the likelihood that it actually exists in nature is higher. Okay, so
Right, sir.
I do not know how to rationalize this rationality beyond this, basically, right? So if you think of Hiranyagarbha, which is the unphysical manifestation, but it is the template of all concepts, basically, right? Hiranyagarbha is another synonym for Brahma that we use, right? So if something has to exist in the nature physically, it has to first be a part of the template, the idea, which is the collection of all the ideas in the Hiranyagarbha, basically. Okay, so that's what they're pointing to, but it's not well developed, right? So you probably have to pick up a more detailed book on Descartes to understand these sort of what the exact framework is in much more detail. So obviously, Jostein is giving a very sort of a high level overview or like a bird's eye view of what Descartes was proposing here. Davji, welcome to the panel, sir.
Hello, hello,
sir.
Vishwa.
Sir, you should stop philosophizing and add more bhakti while you are in Srisalem. Okay.
Yes,
You have to immerse
definitely,
yourself in the bhakti. Yeah.
definitely. After seeing so many
Davji,
devotees, na, I'm
Yeah.
using. I'm
Davji,
I'm
you are
feeling
in
like, yeah,
Davji, you are in Sri Salem.
yes, yes. Right now,
Oh,
I'm talking
wonderful.
from Sri Salam.
Oh, wonderful,
Amazing.
wonderful.
Yeah, I asked Vishwa last Saturday, I guess. No, not Saturday. In last week, I asked anybody from here. He said, don't know. So I said, okay.
All right, all right.
Yeah, usually
Okay.
you need some special privileges only when you visit Vaishnava
Hmm.
places. The Shaiva places are usually just you just go with the flow and you will end up getting what you want.
Hmm.
There's not that much rush and all that.
But now, my problem as a North Indian is this, that firstly, I don't know the language. That's my
Mm.
fault. Okay. The second problem is they like chapati is so much costly.
You
Like
should eat just
I
rice and
ate I ate no, in lunchtime I ate 18 roti. Okay,
oh,
tandoori roti. So one cost me 60 rupees.
ah.
So it was around like 800 900 rupees. I only ate chapati only.
Mm.
Oh God, Dauchi. Just
Daji,
now
you
I
That
eat
ate
that
rice.
would be that would be my whole cost for like for 1 week in MP.
Yeah, right, right. So there you get
I said
nice
okay,
dishes cheaply. Yeah,
yeah, rice. I don't eat
yeah,
rice now. That's the reason.
right, right. So there is a saying, Srisaila Sakaram Drishtva Purat Janmana Vidyate, which means once you see Srisaila hill, you
Ah,
won't have rebirth. That's
okay.
the,
But
it's usually
people
written everywhere.
here, yeah, but here people are very nice, very nice.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
I tried some sentences, in Telugu.
People are
Yeah,
laughing.
I my mutt manager person.
Yeah.
I said namaste. Said namaste. I said ela naru. Yeah.
Very
He
nice.
said he said nenu bagananu. Something said nenu bagananu, right? Okay. So so फिर उसके बाद like after that, see like he start talking in Telugu only. So I said no, I don't
Exactly.
know Telugu. I said I don't know Telugu. So
Yeah.
you said ela naru. I said I know only three four sentences only. So I learned that me peru empty.
Right.
So or for answer na peru Hemant.
Very good. Super.
Okay,
Yeah.
and some other also like the main line I learned like first line. Idi ekada undi.
Correct.
So
Next time
I
you
was
should
like,
ask.
this line I need to learn because
Right.
this is the
Food,
most line I like I will say in this whole trip.
food, food ekkada undi. That also you can ask, and then you'll get food.
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
I asked in what we say like Sikandrabad station in Hyderabad. I asked some person like this Shika hotel ekada undi. He said in the in his language he said something. I was like English. They said no English. They said Hindi. तो बोले थोड़ा थोड़ा दूर जाना उधर से आगे जाना आगे से राइट लेना मैं कहा, ठीक
Mm.
I was like it is very fun here and I
Wonderful.
think if I could stay if I could stay here for 1 or 2 months I could learn language also
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's my
absolutely.
fault I don't have time.
Yeah. No,
Ah,
it's okay. It's
lovely
fine.
place.
There's always a
Yeah.
first time. Yeah, it is a very lovely place. It's on top of the hill and
Yeah.
all that, so it's nice. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
sir.
the Krishna Bridge
Sorry
Dam.
to interrupt. I think, shall we talk about this after the chapter is complete?
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Sorry
Okay.
for
So,
the intrusion.
No,
no, no,
it's
no,
okay.
no
Interruption.
problem.
No issues.
No problem. Let's just talk
I don't know.
after the session is complete. Okay.
No one.
After the reading is over, let's come to the details of your
Yeah,
journey.
totally. Daji was saying one last sentence. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hello, Dauji.
I think last is the connection.
Oh, okay, sir. So,
Please continue,
Hello.
sir. Please continue the reading. Yeah, go ahead, Daji. Finish up.
I was only saying Daya Chesi.
Yeah, దయచేసి. Okay, got it.
దయచేసి. It's like कृपया ध्यान दीजिए. हैदराबाद से श्रीशैलम जाने वाली बस
गाड़ी नंबर
जा चुकी है.
1250.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right,
Go
sir.
ahead.
So,
Please continue the reading. Yeah.
What is crocofant? Vishwagaru?
crocofant.
Crocofant. Hang on. Where is it?
Croco.
Let me. Crocofant.
Yeah,
So
just
fant
in
usually
and
means somebody who is very. See, it's like sycophant, right? We should look at the word's meaning.
Okay.
So where does it? Okay, let me see. Crocofant, huh?
No, Sophie says yes, but just because I possess the idea of a crocofant doesn't mean that the crocofant exists.
Crocofant is like a cross between a crocodile and an elephant.
Ooh.
Wonderful.
That is Sophie. See?
Exactly.
Super.
So, Descartes would have said that it is not inherent in the concept of a crocofant that it exists. On the other hand, it is inherent in the concept of a perfect entity that such an entity exists. According to Descartes, this is just as certain as it is inherent in the idea of a circle that all points of the circle are equidistant from the center. You cannot have a circle that does not conform to this law, nor can you have a perfect entity that lacks its most important property, namely existence.
That's an odd way of
Sophie?
thinking.
It is a decidedly rationalistic way of thinking. Descartes believed, like Socrates and Plato, that there is a connection between reason and being. The more self-evident a thing is to one's reason, the more certain it is that it exists.
So far, he has gotten to the fact that he's a thinking person and that there exists a perfect entity.
Yes, and with this as his point of departure, he proceeds. In the question of all the ideas we have about our reality, for example, the sun and the moon, there is the possibility that there are fantasies. But outer reality also has certain characteristics that we can perceive with our reason. These are the mathematical properties, or in other words, the kinds of things that are measurable, such as length, breadth, and depth. Such quantitative properties are just as clear and distinct to my reason as the fact that I am a thinking being. Qualitative properties such as color, smell, and taste, on the other hand, are linked to our sense perception and as such do not describe outer reality.
So, nature is not a dream after all.
No. And on that point, Descartes once again draws upon our idea of the perfect entity. When our reason recognizes something clearly and distinctly, as is the case for the mathematical properties of outer reality, it must necessarily be so, because a perfect God would not deceive us. Descartes claims God's guarantee that whatever we perceive with our reason also corresponds to reality.
Okay, so now he has found out he's a thinking being, God exists, and there is an outer reality.
But the outer reality is essentially different from the reality of thought. Descartes now maintains that there are two different forms of reality, or two substances. One substance is thought or the mind, the other is extension or matter. The mind is purely conscious. It takes up no room in space and can therefore not be subdivided into smaller parts. Matter, however, is purely extension. It takes up room in space and can therefore always be subdivided into smaller and smaller parts. But it has no consciousness. Descartes maintained that both substances originate from God because only God himself exists independently of anything else. But although both thought and extension come from God, the two substances have no contact with each other. Thought is quite independent of matter, and conversely, the material processes are quite independent of thought.
So he divided God's creation into two.
Precisely. We say that Descartes is a dualist, which means that he effects a sharp division between the reality of thought and extended reality. For example, only man has a mind. Animals belong completely to extended reality. Their living and moving are accomplished mechanically. Descartes considered an animal to be a kind of complicated automaton. As regards extended reality, he takes a thoroughly mechanistic view, exactly like the materialists.
I doubt very much that Hermes is a machine or an automaton. Descartes couldn't have liked animals very much. And what about us? Are we automatons as well?
We are and we aren't. Descartes came to the conclusion that man is a dual creature that both thinks and takes up room in space. Man has thus both a mind and an extended body. St. Augustine and Thomas Aquinas had already said something similar, namely, that man had a body like the animals, and a soul like the angels. According to Descartes, the human body is a perfect machine, but man also has a mind which can operate quite independently of the body. The bodily processes do not have the same freedom, they obey their own laws. But what we think with our reason does not happen in the body, it happens in the mind, which is completely independent of extended reality. I should add, by the way, that Descartes did not reject the possibility that animals could think. But if they have that faculty, the same dualism between thought and extension must also apply to them.
We have talked about this before. If I decide to run after a bus, the whole automaton goes into action. And if I don't catch the bus, I start to cry.
Even Descartes could not deny that there is a constant interaction between mind and body. As long as the mind is in the body, he believed it is linked to the brain through a special brain organ which he called the pineal gland, where a constant interaction takes place between spirit and matter. Therefore, the mind can constantly be affected by feelings and passions that are related to bodily needs. But the mind can also detach itself from such base impulses and operate independently of the body. The aim is to get reason to assume command, because even if I have the worst pain in my stomach, the sum of the angles in a triangle will still be 180 degrees. Thus, humans have the capacity to rise above bodily needs and behave rationally. In this sense, the mind is superior to the body. Our legs can age and become weak. The back can become bowed and our teeth can fall out. But 2 and 2 will go on being 4 as long as there is reason left in us. Reason doesn't become bowed or weak. It is the body that ages. For Descartes, the mind is essentially thought. Baser passions and feelings such as desire and hate are more closely linked to our bodily functions and therefore to extended reality.
I can't get over the fact that Descartes compared the human body to a machine or an automaton.
The comparison was based on the fact that people in his time were deeply fascinated by machines and the workings of clocks, which appeared to have the ability to function of their own accord. The word automaton means precisely that, something that moves of its own accord. It was obviously only an illusion that they moved of their own accord. An, an astronomical clock, for instance, is both constructed and wound up by human hands. Descartes made a point of the fact that ingenious inventions of that kind were actually assembled very simply from a relatively small number of parts compared with the vast number of bones, muscles, nerves, veins, and arteries that the human and the animal body consists of. Why should God not be able to make an animal or a human body based on mechanical laws?
Nowadays, there is a lot of talk about artificial intelligence.
Yes, that is the automaton of our time. We have created machines that can sometimes deceive us into believing that they are intelligent. Machines like these would have terrified Descartes out of his wits. He might have begun to doubt whether human reason really was as free and independent as he had supposed. And there are philosophers who believe that man's spiritual life is no more free than the bodily processes. The human soul is naturally infinitely more complex than any data program. But some people think that in principle we are just as unfree as these data programs. But look, Sophie, I'll show you something. Alberto pointed to a large writing table at the other end of the room. On it stood a small computer. He went over to it. Sophie followed him. Alberto switched the computer on and soon the screen showed C: at the top. He wrote, in quotes, Layla, explaining that this was an advanced conversation program. A text soon appeared at the top of the screen. Hi, my name is Layla. Are you sitting comfortably? Sophie entered 3 letters. Yes, in quotes. She wrote, although she had not yet sat down. Alberto brought up a chair for her. What is your name? Appeared on the screen. Sophie Amundsen, wrote Sophie, and the computer answered, 3 clover close. Nice to meet you, Sophie. Are you looking forward to your 15th birthday? Sophie was startled. Alberto laid a hand on her shoulder and said, I have only given her your name, your address, and your date of birth. It's like when you are going to be introduced to a new friend. It's nice. It's nice to know a little about them beforehand. Not bad, wrote Sophie. Oh dear, I hope you are not feeling bad, Sophie. You must try to talk in whole sentences. Thank you. I'm perfectly well. Can I ask you something? I am glad you are well. Go ahead and ask me something. How old are you? Sophie wrote. I was constructed in Atlanta on August 8, 1988, but I was translated into Norwegian at the Norwegian Polytechnic on March 28, 1990. Gosh, I said, you must talk in whole sentences. I only said gosh. I do not understand slang. I have a vocabulary of over 100,000 words, but the nearest I can find it to gosh is gospel. That means the story of Jesus. Are you a Christian, Sophie? I don't know. As a rule, not knowing is a step toward new knowledge. Socrates would almost likely have said the name, or Descartes for that matter. Socrates was a Greek philosopher who lived for 470 to 399 BC. If you wish to know more, press F7. Descartes was a French philosopher who lived from 1596 to 1650. If you wish to know more, press F7. Thank you, that will be quite enough. Can I ask you something else? I'm glad that this was enough. Go ahead and ask. Alberto laughed quietly. Sophie wrote, who is Hilda Mahler Nag? Hilda Mahler Nag lives in Lily Sand and is exactly the same age as Sophie Amundsen. How do you know? I don't know how. I found her on the hard disk. Sophie felt a hand on her shoulder. I have fed the data program with the little information we have about Hilda, said Alberto. What else do you know about Hilda? Wrote Sophie. Hilda's father is a UN observer in Lebanon. He has the rank of major and continually sends postcards to his daughter. I want you to find him. I can't do that. He is not on any of my files, and I am not coupled to any other database. I said find him. Are you angry, Sophie? So many exclamation marks are a sign of violent feelings. I want to talk to Hilda's father. You have difficulty controlling yourself. If you wish to talk about your childhood, press F9. Alberto laid his hand on Sophie's shoulder again. She is right. This is not a crystal ball. Layla is only a data program. Shut up, wrote Sophie. As you wish, Sophie. Our acquaintance lasted only 13 minutes and 52 seconds. I shall remember everything we have said. I shall now end the program. The letter C: once again showed up on the screen. Now we can sit down again, said Alberto. But Sophie had already pressed some other keys. Nag, she wrote. Immediately, the following message appeared on the screen. Here I am. Now it was Alberto who jumped. Who are you? Wrote Sophie. Major Albert Nag at your service. I came straight from Lebanon. What is your command? This beats everything, breathed Alberto. The rat has sneaked onto the hard disk. He motioned for Sophie to move and sat down in front of the keyboard. How did you manage to get into my PC? He wrote. A mere bagatelle, dear colleague. I am exactly where I choose to be. You loathsome data virus. Now, at the moment I am here as a birthday virus. May I send a special greeting? No thanks, we have had enough of them. But I'll be quick, all in your honor, dear Hilda. Once again, a very happy 15th birthday. Please excuse the circumstances, but I wanted my birthday greetings to spring up around you everywhere you go. Love from Dad, who is longing to give you a great big hug. Before Alberto could write again, the sign C colon had once again appeared on the screen. Alberto wrote in colons DIRKNAG, nag, which called up the following information on the screen. nag.lib 147643615901247 nag.lil 326.
Yeah, basically Alberto wrote a bunch of instructions, right, which called up the following
Yes.
information. Alberto wrote erase nag star and switched off the computer.
Yes.
There, now I have erased them, he said, but it's impossible to say where he'll turn up next time. He went on sitting there staring at the screen. Yeah, go ahead, sir. Please.
Yeah, he went on sitting there staring at the screen. Then he added, the worst of it all was the name, Albert Nag. For the first time, Sophie was struck by the similarity between the two names, Albert Nag and Alberto Knox. But Alberto was so incensed that she dared not say a word. They went over and sat by the coffee table again. So there ends the chapter of Descartes.
Descartes. So Descartes is over. Some interesting ideas were introduced. And obviously,
sir.
there's a lot of lack of clarity sitting where we are sitting today. But for those times, because he was a mathematician, it was very good that they took those leaps when they took them, basically. Right? Because coming from the Renaissance period and the Baroque period, there was a lot of confusion. So Descartes sort of helped them to go back again to this whole focus on the individual, right? God, all these ideas are still there, but the focus was a lot more on understanding yourself, basically, right? So there is the
Yes,
internal world, there is the external world, there is the dream. All these things were put
Yes,
back
sir.
on the table, basically, which was very important for philosophy.
Yes, sir. Actually, I found it very interesting that Descartes had to go to the analogy of a dream and the real life to find the reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're a rationalist,
Yes, sir.
the beginning and the end of your rationalism is that crossover between the reality and the dream state, right? And the modern day rationalists seem to completely deny or ignore that boundary, which is why they are not true rationalists. They are nothing but agenda peddling political pawns, basically, nothing more.
Exactly, sir.
Right? A true philosopher will never sidestep that question because that's where the real philosophy starts. And the philosophers like Descartes and even the ancient philosophers knew it.
Yes, sir.
You know.
So as for we have encountered the people that they called themselves as rationalists are no true rationalists.
Oh yeah. Forget it. They are nothing but agenda peddling haters.
Exactly.
So we don't even want to go to. I mean, these sessions are there not to bring them up again and again, but to just ignore their ignorance, basically.
Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. I mean, we are thankfully traversing the European philosophical thought process, which obviously has parallels in the Indian philosophical thought process as well, and that's where we'll stay.
Absolutely,
All right,
sir.
It's almost 1 hour, so no major discussion. We'll pick up Descartes again. We'll discuss each of these as we continue to read and understand and explore. But for today,
sir.
We'll close this session, sir.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir.
Yeah. Thanks to all the viewers that watched. all the panelists that participated, including Black Tiger Garu, SK Garu, Dauji Garu, who is visiting Srisalam. We wish his visit goes very well and he accumulates fond memories. Thanks to Siksha Garu for doing all the reading, as well as SK Garu. Today I had some internet issues, so I couldn't really participate that much. Nevertheless, we look forward to another session number 17, where we'll be talking about Spinoza. It's the next evolution of the Western philosophical thought process. Until then, goodbye. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Share this stream if you like the channel and its content. Please subscribe and also post some comments. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. We'll all try to answer them over the course of the week. See you in another session of reading of Sophie's World next week. Until then, goodbye. Stay safe. Sorry, sir. You have a question, Vamsi Garu. I was about to hit end. Please go ahead, sir. Quickly. You can come to the stream if you want and talk. Let me post the link. Yes,
Hello.
sir.
Happy
Hello,
Sunday.
sir. Please go ahead. Happy Sunday, sir. Please go ahead.
I just started to listen in. I joined
Yes.
in the family session. So the question I have is, we were reading about the mind and voice, right? Mind and body. I want to know from this book, where do they say that the mind exists of an individual, mind of an individual? Does it stay in the body or outside the body or where?
Inside.
Any idea?
Inside. It's an inside. Yeah. So I think therefore I am. One of the key things in the European philosophy is there is a concept of mind and there is a concept of soul, basically, right? But the mind beyond the mind and soul, they don't go beyond that, basically. So they sort of play within the realm of the physical, you know.
Okay, interesting. They believe
Yeah.
that the mind is in the body or in the head.
Mind, they usually mean brain, basically.
Ooh, big problem.
You know, yeah, huge problem, because that's why even in the previous session when we were reading, there was this conversation between an astronaut and a brain surgeon, right? The astronaut was an atheist, and the brain surgeon was a what do you call? He was a
believer,
Christian,
right?
basically.
Yeah.
Right. And the astronaut said, "Well, you know, I have traveled into outer space, and there's no heaven. I've never seen anything, no angels, nothing." So the brain surgeon said, "I have cut open many brains. I have never seen a thought." You know.
Right.
So, what do you have to say about that, right? So, just because you haven't seen a thought, does it mean that the thought doesn't exist?
Yeah,
right?
rather they believe in
So
what you
the
see
Western
is
philosophers,
what you believe.
yeah, exactly. So the Western philosophers have always grappled with this idea of the lack of physicality of the thought, which prevents them really from making outrageous statements like the entire world is only what you see. Right?
Yeah. Even I did not know this concept, like where is mind? Nobody asked me. The thought never, occurred to me. But last year, I was watching a YouTube video while sitting in the airport, and I came. I happened to watch that video. It's a video of an Indian doctor who lives in Bangalore. He spoke eloquently about mind and what does it do with every body cell and so on and so forth. So I was comparing these notes with that video. That's when I wanted to jump onto the live stream.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, sir.
Howdy.
Good to discuss.
Howdy.
Hello, Lawyer Garu.
Hello, sir.
What's going on?
Hello.
Hello.
Good evening, sir.
I was just about to join. You were saying your vote of thanks. I just
And
came
I
back.
stopped
No,
them
because
from
nobody was
doing
there.
Yeah, you did.
Anyway, the Descartes chapter was over. That's why we were planning to close, but more than happy to continue the conversation.
Well, this
Wonderful.
book is kind of old book, right? Does the medical field in the Western world does still believe that mind is in the body? Do they still believe that? Do we know?
Yeah. So there are, but see, if you look at the core Western idea, they absolutely do. I mean, on average, they do believe it because, see, beyond a certain point, medicine doesn't go into this philosophical sort of
It ends there, right?
realms,
Yeah.
right? Because the modern day medicine is all about fixing emergencies. The Western medicine, at least, is all about taking care of emergency situations, fixing what they think are issues, right? Beyond that, they just put it in the psychoanalysis or psychiatric realm, and then they leave it, right? But at the same time, there are certain experiments that were done where the brain impulses are going in one direction, but the patient is able to do action that is not uh, directly mapped to that area of the brain and things like that.
Right. Yeah.
So given that, if you listen to some, I mean, I do not want to mention too many names, but you have heard Deepak Chopra say things like,
Yeah.
consciousness is not local, right? When he says it, it's just pure marketing garbage, combining the Western medicine and some Eastern philosophy.
Aligning
And,
to the audience, right?
He's just trying to sell some snake oil to get people to listen to his more classes and things like that. Nothing wrong with it. He's free to do whatever he wants to do.
Sir,
But in a pure philosophical sense, those kinds of statements they are less meaningful than and less useful than if you want to read the core Vedanta. If you want to read the core Vedanta, then you'll get more ideas from there.
Correct. Just a follow-up
sir,
comment.
so sir, mind and consciousness are both are different things, right, sir?
I mean, the way Indian conception happens, they are different. So mind
What
means
about the Western? Go ahead, sir. Sir, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes,
yes,
yes.
sir.
Yeah. So what was the question? Sorry.
What about in the Western sphere that they think of about consciousness and mind? Are they both same or they are different?
I don't think there is this concept of consciousness. I have not seen in the Western world. They think stop with the mind. Mind as in like the neurological side of it. If you want to talk about consciousness, they bring in this idea of soul, which is lot more ancient and has lot less clarity because religion enters the picture, right? So Christianity and these kinds of things take over, and then you are talking about the soul going to heaven and that kind of stuff.
What I observed is there are some basic mistakes, if I may dare say, that these guys have done. Like, for example, heart. The heart that we say. We're all led to believe that heart has like 4 walls and it just it pumps the blood into multiple organs in the
chambers,
body.
you mean,
4 chambers, right? But if you look at the Sanskrit word hrudayam, what that literally, if you break down that word, it means hru ante it just it spreads by way of the fountain, like in a fountain. Imagine a fountain. Hru dayam dadami dayam giving అంటే రక్తాన్ని విరజిమ్ముతుంది అనేది అర్థం. అక్కడ హృదయం అంటే ఇక్కడ మనకి హార్ట్ అంటే ఏం చెప్పారు, అది చెప్పలేదు, వేరే ఏదో చెప్పారు. సో అట్లా దెర్ ఆర్ ఫండమెంటల్ గ్యాప్స్ ఇన్ ద వే దే డిఫైన్ ది బాడీ ఆర్గన్స్ అండ్ ఇట్స్ ఫంక్షన్స్. So that is what I'm noticing. Interesting, right?
Yeah, so essentially this goes into that boundary between what you are perceiving and what is beyond your perception, right? So the closest in terms of defining a holistic framework is our Sankhya framework. that is probably that is the first of the Vedanta darshanas, basically. So if you go to the Sankhya framework, it has all these elements ordered in a very structured manner, basically, right? And then when you
Right.
combine it with yoga, you're going to get this whole idea of the mind or chitta, basically. Okay.
Yeah, I was about to ask you just that, sir. When you
Yeah.
were answering before, I mean, when your internet connection was bad, we heard something like chitta or something like that. That's what you were saying.
Yeah. So
We have
basically,
a
sir.
sir. Before you answer that, there is one question from SK Garu. Consciousness versus conscience. So
Correct.
she wants in Telugu. I think Shiksha and SK Garu are asking the same question, more or less.
Okay. So I'll explain in English because these are two English terms. I don't know the equivalent Telugu. I'll have to think and then I'll tell you. Consciousness is it is the ultimate perceiver. It is the witness, right? Even in the Sankhya framework, the Purusha is the consciousness, right? That is the self-effulgent, self-illuminating, right? The first among the many elements, the element that perceives all the rest of the elements, that is consciousness. Existence, consciousness, bliss. Sat Chit Ananda, basically. The Chit is the consciousness, right? Then conscience is something, it's a moral framework that you have internally that prevents you from doing good versus bad. So when you do bad, you feel bad. Why? Because you have a conscience, right? When you do good, you feel good. Why? Because the same conscience, the internal moral compass of a person is called conscience. Okay. So
So it falls under the moral framework. It's a
yeah, conscience is a lot more vyavaharika, basically.
right, sir.
Consciousness is transcendental and it's a much larger concept, basically. So, for example, a rationalist can use a term like conscience because it's in the
Right, sir.
vyavaharika, it's in the day-to-day activity realm. But maybe they'll never use a word like consciousness because it is the perceiver. By it cannot be perceived. It can only be known intuitively, right? It is like the example that J.K. Jiddu Krishnamurti gives is, can you grind, how do I put it? Can you chew your own teeth, right? Can you see your own eye, basically, right? Your eyes cannot see themselves because this eyes are the seeing mechanisms, right? There has to be a second entity to see your eyes, right? And that goes back to the same Drigdrishya Viveka, which we are going to do at some point by Swami Vivekananda. That is one of the core pillars of the Indian philosophical framework that leads to Advaita eventually. So that is the difference between consciousness versus conscience. Conscience is very simple, moral compass. Consciousness is larger concept, the Purusha, the perceiver, right? The non-dual, Satchidananda, basically. Existence, consciousness, bliss. It is that, basically, the Brahman. The
Sir, I have
Upanishadic,
one more
Indian
question.
Upanishadic Brahman. Yes, sir. Sorry.
In the Indian context, the philosophy, is that different than the Vaidya Shastra, or one is part of the other?
So it depends on which school of philosophy you subscribe to. So there are 6 officially recognized that consider Vedas to be their foundation, right? So the Vaidya Shastra. So if you look at medicine, right? So even in medicine, there is a physical aspect, there is a psychological aspect, there is a mind aspect. All these things are there, right?
Yeah.
So to a certain extent, philosophy and medicine are parallels. You know, they only converge when the disease or the affliction, as they say, is not related to something physical. That is when slowly you start moving into the psychological realm. Otherwise, you have an injury to your hand, you fix it, right? I mean, maybe you can do some counseling to the patient to make them think positively so that it helps healing. And that there is no, I mean, it's not in a sense very purely philosophical. So the pure philosophy is all about questions, right? You postulate a question and you try to frame an answer to it based on some evidence, based on some intuition. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, what I'm realizing is asking is easy, but the answer may not be easy.
Yeah, so the way you go about answering some of these questions is you have to root yourself in a framework first. The moment you step out of the framework, stop using words in terms of how it is defined within that framework. You can draw all kinds of conclusions, but they'll not be shastriya, right?
Coherent condo, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because now you have left the ground and you are now flying without a parachute, right? So you can make up your own stuff, like what Descartes tried to do, right? But at some point in time, you are going to come to that intersection point where you'll have to define your own abstract terms to represent the abstract understanding that we have, like the semi-reality, non-reality, perception, the physical truth versus the perception that you have. These kinds of questions have always been there. It is inherent in the human nature. The more you ignore it, the more likely you will be able to explain as a whole what the human experience is, right?
So more like make your own frame. That is the foundational element in the whole thing.
Yeah, but then again, then you'll be on an island. You create your own island kind of thing, right? So all the Indian philosophers that have followed these frameworks will not come with you, because now you have left the framework and gone in your own small boat to somewhere
reservation,
else.
Right?
Yeah. So my personal way of doing it or understanding it is I always stick to the framework, always, right? If it is not defined, throw it out. Try to explain it using the framework. Otherwise, treat it as an exception and put it aside. Basically, eventually you might find an answer. Don't throw away the framework because it cannot explain one situation. It's very easy for us to do.
Right. The way I'm understanding all of this is like when you learn, or when we used to learn any computer language, we used to first follow the framework. Before the framework, we used to learn the syntax. That's a concept that doesn't exist anymore. But
correct. Yeah, you need to understand the terminology, how it is defined, and you need to understand how completely it is able to address the problem space, right? And then you will start finding that every one of them only it leaves out a particular aspect of it for its convenience, because there's no unifying. I mean, the closest unifying theory that you can talk about is, from an Indian context, it is Advaita Vedanta only. It can explain most things.
Right. Yeah. Which I have never read. No one asked me to read, never introduced to me until now.
Yeah, no problem. So I think Manavani has a couple of sessions. The first one was a little bit less. It became too much of a hotspot. The second session, we had a good discussion but it is framed in the sense of Advaita, Visishta Advaita, and Advaita. That is the discussion. So every one of the participants presented their point of view about it. So you can take a look. Sometimes it's easier to, in comparison, if you study, you'll be able to quickly grasp the ideas. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In Manavahini, did you discuss Sankhya, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. We discussed Sankhya, we discussed yoga.
Sankhya was the first philosophical thing we did, actually. It is there, I'll send you that playlist.
Okay, sir.
Yeah,
I need
and that is the oldest of the philosophies, and that is actually, if you are an Advaitin, it is your best friend. Let me put it that way. More than any other philosophy, Sankhya gives you you don't have to move too far away from it. Yeah, I mean, yoga and all these are good. They are to me derivatives of Sankhya. But Advaita, if you know Sankhya and if you know Advaita, it's fairly, you can get away with the 99% of the questions.
అసలు
Hmm.
సాంఖ్య అనే మాట బ్రేక్ డౌన్
Yeah.
చేయాలంటే ఎక్కడన్నా అవకాశం ఉంటుందేమో.
Yeah,
'Cause అది
Sankhya
తీసుకుంటే
means, Sankhya means numbers, lists. It literally means. Okay, Sankhya
Okay.
means number, right? We have that in Telugu. Sankhya, right? Sankhya comes, that one of the derivations is that. So it talks about the 24 elements. Everything, they view everything as elements that constitute something. You know. So according to them, there are 24 elements, and the 25th one sits outside, kind of thing. So it goes from Moola Prakriti to the visible Prakriti to the mind, then the Ahankara, then the sense organs, then the elements that the sense organs perceive, and that's how the universe is constructed. That is the framework.
This is so
Right?
interesting.
We can, we can discuss this in one of these RB sessions, where we can discuss in Telugu and we can be more free with our language and explanations. Right? If you really want, there is a pedagogical text called Sankhya Karika by Iswar Krishna. Okay, so we know about Sankhya only through that Karika. Karika means commentary. We know about Sankhya because of this commentary, the book that was originally founded or written by Iswar Krishna. Sankhya, it's called Karika. We are going to do that also one of these days. It's available in English. You can go through it, right?
This
and
is also
watch that
one
session.
of the this is also one of the Gotra names, like we have Bharadwaja and so on, right? This is one more Gotra name also.
Oh, so called Sankhya?
Sankhyayana.
Sankhyayana. Okay, so Sankhyayana might be the name of this. So the proposer of that particular Darsana is a person named Kapila Maharshi. Yes.
Right. If I may add, that is also our Gotram. And you know what I'm saying? That's our Gotram. Sankhyayana, the one belonging to this Sankhyayana group or whatever, right?
Nice.
And the rishis that we have, or Vishwamitra, Devavrata, and Audala. So there is a relation to these guys. I don't know what kind. Interesting, very interesting. Probably too complicated also for us to conceive and understand in its entirety.
So no problem. You got to go slow, one step at a time. You got to climb a staircase. You can't keep on skipping, right? So this channel is specifically, we do it in English, and the focus, at least the focus I wanted initially, was the Western ideologies, basically. Right? So we did the first reading was Animal Farm, which is more of a communist parody on the communism. And then this one we are doing more of an intro to Western philosophy through the eyes of a Western philosopher, right?
Right.
Which is,
so I didn't know that. So we use English here.
Yes, as much as possible.
We try.
We try, exactly. We try. But that's sir. Awesome. Any other questions?
None for me.
Okay, thank you, Vamsi garu. Thanks for the questions. Sir, Lawyer garu, are we good to go? Sikshardin garu?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. I'm sure there's going to be some RB session today. So
we'll
discuss
last question, maybe, if I'm allowed.
Yes, sir.
Are we going to have,
absolutely.
Is this a weekly session, or is it impromptu, or how?
No, it's not impromptu. It's so right now it's weekly. It's 10:30 Eastern on Sunday mornings.
Nice.
9:30 Central. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. All right, Vamsi garu. Thank you for coming, participating, asking very interesting questions.
No, that mind got me in. So.
Yeah, totally. So there is a conception of mind in Sankhya, right? Very clearly given, actually. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, that again, that framework covers what I think is about 99% of all the areas that have been explored. There are still some questions there also. Okay, so more to come. All right. So thanks everybody for participating, panelists, commentators, future viewers of this stream. Please like and subscribe. If you have any questions, please post it in the comments. I'll try to answer them. We'll all try to answer them over the week. See you again in another session of reading next week. That will be session 17. We'll do Spinoza next time. All right.